Welcome to the Mobile Workforce Podcast, where we sit down and have real conversations with business leaders that have been where you are. During these interviews, we'll dive into what it takes to improve systems and champion processes that maximize performance. Each week, our trailblazing guests share their experiences and understanding of the workforce to help inspire change, challenge our thinking, and share what it takes to successfully travel the road to profitability. Now here's our host, co-founder and chief evangelist of About Time and WorkMax, Mike Merrill.
Hello and welcome to the Mobile Workforce Podcast. I'm your host, Mike Merrill, and today we are sitting down with Dominique Main. Dominique is the director at Epcon Communities, a builder with a mission to build homes, neighborhoods, and lifestyles that provide an overall remarkable experience. In a special two-part series, we're going to discuss 10 challenges that home builders face today and how they are able to best overcome those. This conversation is based on a white paper by Epcon and a presentation that I saw Dominique give at the Brain Consulting AEC Summit a few months back earlier this year. So today's episode, we're going to cover the first 5, and then we'll cover items numbers 6 through 10 a little bit later in an episode next week. So we're looking forward to this conversation today. Dominique, thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me, Mike.
You bet. So let's talk about challenge number 1. You have on your bullet list land. So why is land number 1 of all of these things that you think are a potential challenge?
Well, the challenge there, Mike, is that when the recession happened and the home building crash in 2008 and thereabouts, what happened is that builders and developers scaled back in their operations. And so there was a lot less production, a lot less crews involved in the production of not only homes, but specifically quite a bit in lot inventory. So lot inventory has been a challenge across the country for every segment of builders for years now for that reason. Slowly starting to see a recovery. Ali Wolf from Zonda was at our national conference in April and talked about that we are looking to see 10+% increase in lot inventory this year over last year. So starting to see recovery there, but it is a major challenge for builders who are looking to continue to expand their operations.
Yeah, that makes more sense with that background. So tell me, or the listeners as well, what are the overall best practices for land acquisition? Because that's really what we're talking about here, right?
The first piece of that puzzle is really knowing what it is that you're looking for and taking the time and investing into the research to find out what it is that your home buyers are looking for in their location. It goes back to that old real estate adage, location, location, location.
Yeah.
So what it is that those buyers are looking for. For example, in our company, we serve the active adult demographic, and you would think that they'd want to be close to healthcare, but it's actually not true. They like some proximity to healthcare, but one of their biggest factors is being nearby to a grocery store. So being able to do that kind of research and know what it is that your buyer is looking for ultimately is very helpful and really critical in determining what site is going to make sense for a company.
That makes sense. So are there some strategies, some tactics that somebody should invoke in doing this search?
Well, one way that's very effective is if you have history on where your homes have sold the best, to be able to pull the demographics of those sites and use that to establish your best practices moving forward. So some of the key metrics that we look at, and in addition to proximity to services, are going to be things like wow.
That's okay. That's okay. We can crop it right there. That's okay.
Yeah.
So you could just start this. You could start the answer over.
Okay.
Whenever you're ready.
So income, average household income for the area that is selling well with your homes is a very good indicator. Also, average growth rates for the area, and that really applies across any sort of product. You want to see an area that's healthy and growing. And that doesn't have to be a huge number, but seeing positive growth is very useful. And then things that are specific to the demographic, like what growth is happening and what income levels are for that specific population you're targeting. as well as looking at what types of services that they are wanting to be in proximity to are all really helpful.
Yeah, that's great information. I love that you are really getting back to the data, right? It sounds like data is the critical thing to analyze here, right?
Yes. Yeah. And
No,
there are some intrinsic pieces to that, like, things you might not expect. I mean, millennials really tend to be the group that's known for being very social, but we actually find that active adults are looking for that connection as well. So creating an environment where that's either generated within the community or you have something nearby that you can draw from are all big selling points when it comes to competing with other builders in your area.
that's interesting. Oh, that's great. Well, so what about as far as like size of project, or what recommendations do you have for somebody that's looking to maybe migrate into more of this type of the specialty market?
We work with home builders that are anywhere from just getting started all the way up to 300 plus homes that they're already building every year. So the land really does have a lot to do with that. Our sweet spot for a project is around the 10 to 30 acre range. We like to build communities within a time frame where we have more predictability around what the lot cost is going to end up being and how that fits within the market. So we used to do larger projects that would be hundreds of lots at a time. We now like to have more control, and that's definitely a great piece of advice I'd say for builders that are looking to get into new projects, is being in that size range where you have some predictability, or at least a closer time frame where you can see how things are going to pan out as close as you can tell within that 30 to 60 home range is usually great for that.
Yeah, especially with an economy that's sketchy or that's challenged right now, you really want to have a shorter window to have a little more predictability, I think. So that's a great point.
Yes, investors like that as well, that they are going to see their money back sooner. Banks tend to be more open to that also.
Got it. That makes sense. So what about, I know challenge number two you talked about in your presentation was margins. What can you share with us about margins and why they're such an issue or an important thing to focus on?
Yes. So margins is one of the number one reasons why builders interact with us and want to learn from our best practices, because anyone can eventually learn to build a home and build a team and deliver that to customers in their area. But I think when I talk with builders, one of the things I hear across the board is that people want to increase the value of their time, their personal time, and make larger opportunities for themselves, for succession planning for their kids, and for their team. They want to provide better opportunities for their employees. So that's an area where I do see quite a bit of focus for builders across the country. So there's a number of strategies that we encourage and work through to affect that bottom line.
Got it. Are there, I know obviously with margins, knowing your costs, having better estimates, what are some other things what are some other strategies that can be invoked to help control that outcome a little bit better, like you mentioned earlier?
In terms of margins, one of the key strategies that we employ is building a consistent product in one area in that community, like we've just spoken about when we were talking about land. So
Mhm.
in a community that's going to be 30, 60, 90 homes at a time, you have some consistency of where your trades are going, where your team is going to work, and there's so many economies of scale that can happen there. So that's a big piece of it. The other part I alluded to was product. So if you think about it in terms of a lot of builders have carved out their niche building custom homes. And custom homes are beautiful. They're works of art. It's such a specialty business. Building the same 3 to 5 floor plans over and over again in a community and personalizing them a bit in a way that works for you, that benefits your company and benefits the customer, is a strategy that can really help to make margins much more predictable and controllable.
Yeah, I really like that. I think another part, and I'm sure this is part of your presentation typically, but the type of materials that are being used, that are more readily accessible, and just having more control there also, I think, has become a really important thing for a lot of companies.
Yes, we had Al Trellis at our national conference in April as well. And Al was talking to us about offering a menu of options that you've curated essentially. Then you have control. You know what it is that your buyers are going to enjoy, what you can offer well that is beneficial to your company. And then you have the ability to take that platform from there and you can make adjustments to that menu anytime it suits you. But you wouldn't go into a restaurant and just sit down and say, I'll have a T-bone steak and I want that with baked potato with, chocolate sprinkles and, whatever. You wouldn't just say, whatever it was. You're going to order off that menu because that's what they've curated for you, that they know that they can produce well.
Got it. That's a great analogy, actually. So I love that, having more control over the choices and options.
Yes. One of
What?
our top builders,
Mhm.
Mike, is up in Pittsburgh and had shared with us that when his family started working with us in 1999, they were fully custom builders. One of the things that they've seen over the years is being able just to have more vision and more insight into what affects those margins so that those changes can be made because of that duplicatable model. So whether you are building a product that's targeted to military housing or first-time home buyer or move-up buyer, that concept applies across the board.
Yeah, that's great. I know one of the other things that you had highlighted in your presentation was the importance of continuous learning and being adaptable. So maybe talk about that just a little bit as well. I mean, I know there's rigidity that is needed for predictability, but what about having some level of flexibility?
Flexibility is critical in this business. The builders that we've worked with that have the strongest businesses today they're the highest quality people. There's a correlation in their willingness to learn, in their commitment to growth, in their humility to be able to take a hit and not let it hurt their ego to where they took their toys and went home.
Right, right. Okay. Well, I think we could all learn from that probably, right? Uh,
Absolutely.
Love that. So,
Absolutely.
one of the other things, and I wrote this down several times because I noticed that you called this out, but you use the term partnering up, and you use it in different parts of your presentation, and I thought, oh, this again. Dominique really believes in partnering. Maybe let's just talk high level about where and why and how companies can better partner to mitigate some of these risks that they may be experiencing on their own.
Yeah, you will hear that from me a lot because I'm collaborative by nature. I'm always looking at how we can do things better, and that's a personality thing. So I know that builders and people in general are all across the scale where that's concerned, but I think that there are good fits for that for every personality type and vision because the National Association of Home Builders, for example, has their Builder 20 clubs that builders can participate in with builders in different markets from their own and be able to share best practices and really encourage each other and push each other. That competitive spirit comes in the best possible way to help encourage each other on to grow. In addition to that, like internally, we have a Builder 20 type of group where our builders work together from different markets across the country. We're in 27 states. So they're able to collaborate and share best practices. But there are a lot of different ways to do that. Sometimes I will be working with a builder who is really great tactically, but they're not as great on the finance side. And I'll meet someone else who has abundance of capital and is very sharp about placing that. And I will introduce them just because I know that there's a possibility that they could do more together, that there could be synergies there.
Wow, I love that, and I think that's something that most of the trades and construction in general can do better. Always, we always use the term frenemy, and it's like we're kind of friends, but we're kind of not. We compete here, but we're helping each other there. I think having that balance, to your point, is a great way that companies can, instead of competing against each other on something, maybe help each other both win together. Right.
Yes, we had about 10 of our top builders in a room a couple months ago. And, they're always talking about like, oh, I'm going to beat you next year. But then they'll turn right around and say, oh, what I'm seeing is really helping with realtors is et cetera.
Oh,
So
cool.
it's a cool balance.
Yeah, it always makes me happy to see and be a part of those types of conversations, and then events where companies are collaborating. Like that, we're big into the AGC and some of the other CFMA, some of the other associations that have panels and boards and discussions where they are collaboratively sharing best practices. So I love that that's a part of your approach to things, because I think a lot of companies could benefit by being more open minded to that.
I
So
agree.
so now on that topic, one of your other challenges that you do address is competition. So now that we talked about working together and collaborating, how do companies do a better job when it comes to competing?
Yes. So competitive strategies are always a key part of how we do business. I think that the most important thing to remember is that if you really want it and you have a clear vision and you're willing to learn and grow, that you can carve out your place in the market. And in times like we're currently seeing, you can actually carve out a bigger market share. That's the opportunity. When companies who were in this to get rich quick or didn't have the character to take good care of their customers are going to fall through the cracks. Their banks are going to shut them down, and other things happen during times like these that help to eliminate those sources of bottom level competition, allowing greater market share opportunities for those who are diligent in building up their business the right way.
Yeah, I like the way you put that. I think one thing that comes to mind, you may have heard this before, but we talk about it often in our business and our market, and that is, red ocean opportunities versus blue ocean opportunities. And the red
Yeah.
ocean is where all the sharks are, and there's a lot of competition, and there's this feeding frenzy where you've really got to fight and scrap to get your piece. Whereas if you're out in the blue ocean, you can there's a lot easier opportunity for choice and growth without having to fight so hard. So, what is your take on that approach, and what are some ideas that you have around that?
I'm all in on that because actually, Brady Bryan, when you interviewed him for this
Yeah.
podcast, had quoted me on this story. My best friend from college is a politician now. She's running for school board. So I'm super proud of her for that. And she was telling me that her campaign manager was working through strategy for how she was going to present herself as a candidate for this position. And the two people she was running against are parents. So
Mm,
those parents have something that she doesn't have. And the campaign manager was saying to her, you're not going to go up against them as a parent. You're going to go up against them with what strengths you have. And the strength that she has is that she's been a teacher for almost 20 years and she has taught over 3,000 students. So imagine all those kids that she's known, their dreams, their
mm.
goals, their struggles, and what tremendous advantage that would provide to her, knowing all of those children in her work as a school board member. So that to me is a huge, a perfect example of how to work in a space, really identifying what it is that you're passionate about, what you're great at, and leveraging that as your competitive advantage. Instead of seeing somebody else who's making something look good, they might make that look good, but that doesn't mean that you're going to have the same advantages there.
Yeah, I love the idea of taking into account what all of the children's needs and struggles and challenges are, not just this one particular mother and the experience within the walls of their home, right? You
Yes,
wouldn't want some other parent raising your children, right? So yeah, that's a
right.
great analogy. I absolutely love that.
Yeah, and that could have been perceived as a weakness for
Hmm.
her, but you actually see it's a tremendous strength. And I think that we all have those areas of tremendous strength that we can develop to be of greater service, because that's where we make more value for our time, is being of greater service.
Well, one of the things you brought up earlier, you talked about really knowing what you're passionate about or knowing what that mission is and your goal. So, really having a plan with the end in mind. And I think, that really dovetails into some of the other points that you've talked about with simplifying and maybe offering less choices. Maybe they're better options, but there's less of them. So that, again, we're not putting chocolate sprinkles on the T-bone steak, right?
Right. And builders are in the position of power right now to do that. Sales may
Yeah.
be slowing down, but they're still at 2020 levels. So if you look at that comparatively speaking,
Mm.
is still excellent and they're still an undersupply of homes. So it's a perfect opportunity to say, here's how I'm going to choose to serve this community in a way that's going to benefit my business more and ultimately benefit that buyer more.
Yeah, I love that. One other thing that I know you've talked about is the importance of keeping it clean or the appearance. A menu at a restaurant, to use your prior analogy, written on a napkin, isn't going to feel the same as something that's really well put together and designed well and has quality, right? So, what kind of tactics can businesses use to invoke some of those appearance and presentation items?
Yes, that is a high priority, I believe, for any company who wants to our point, compete well, because you want to be able to show how you're different, what your advantages are, and showcasing that really is best done through an excellent marketing team. And being able to dial in that language. What's the message about why this buyer is going to benefit from these homes more so, and this community more so than other product or homes that they might be considering?
Yeah, that's great. What when so this also dovetails back into some of the other things we were discussing, but everybody knows the supply chain challenges, the shortages of materials and certain things, concrete and fly ash and cement mix and all these different things that maybe 10 years ago weren't even a second thought ever. Like you could get concrete on demand, and now it's like they're actually doing allocations and contractors can only pour so many times a week and on certain days. I mean, it's pretty nuts in some places. So what can you tell us about navigating those troubled waters today, and what are you advising companies to do to mitigate that risk?
What we are advising companies to do is to order ahead with their materials and set up that menu of options based on availability to the best of their ability. There are still some challenging items out there. We had challenges with garage doors not too long ago. We're
Mm.
actually putting in temporary closures so we could close on houses. So that's actually another piece of that puzzle is being a problem solver, having that problem solving mentality. Not that, oh no, this is happening to me. I'm the victim here, but okay, this is the situation. Now how do we get it done?
Yeah, so there's obviously at a local level, there's things that you may have a better pulse on, but if like this silicon shortage for chips or things that have computer components um, that are made in China, right? How do we foresee? What can we do with those other items that we really don't have as much control over to get around some of those things?
Yes, good communication with the home buyers is critical in situations like that because they want the home to be finished as much as we do. They have been dreaming of it, they've been envisioning it, they've put their money towards it. They have probably started activities to be out of their old house or rental or wherever they are currently. So they're very passionate about making that move as well. So that having good communication during that time to show them that we're doing everything possible to get them into their home, and then also talking through solutions. So if a chip, for example, isn't available, what can we do in the meantime? And here's the projected time frame to get to that original point that we were all targeting.
Yeah, and your garage door example is actually a fantastic one of problem solving. So I think applying those same principles sounds like what you would advise.
Yes. Yeah, that's exactly right. And having some of that complexity taken out of the home building by having a standardized product that you know that the buyer is going to love because you've invested well into the design of it and you have vetted out any issues with it, that is certainly a strategy that helps to make things smoother overall.
Great. So one of the other areas, and this, I think this is a constant challenge, especially in our industry, but when we talk about labor, the labor shortage, we have a skilled labor shortage. We're heavily involved. You may have heard of, some of the episodes we've done with NAWIC, National Association for Women in Construction, and we've had others talk about college programs or programs for potential candidates that are coming out of high school and training them about roofing or the trades. What advice would you give, or are you sharing with your companies to try and help fill that gap in the labor shortage?
First of all, it helps to be the employer of choice or the builder of choice with trades. And there are a couple of ways to position for that. One of them is building that consistent product. And I want to say, just for the sake of everyone out there that builds luxury homes today, that a consistent product doesn't mean an entry level product. It can be a luxury product, but something that your team and your trades can get to know, where they can build efficiently, where they can make better projections so that they can staff more thoughtfully in their company and be able to plan ahead is huge for those trades, because getting pulled in and out of jobs and having change orders where they have to completely swap out a certain finish or move a wall or whatever that might be, that's frustrating for people. And while most people are patient and they'll work through that kind of thing and they appreciate the art and the craft of it, it's also very nice for those trades and preferable to them to have something where it's duplicatable. They can be efficient in their work and produce better margins for themselves and more predictability for themselves and their teams.
Yeah, I like that. And I think back to some of the other things that you said, I'm thinking of maybe more personalization over customization. So like if maybe they have 3 brick options and 3 stone options, and so they can choose brick or stone, and if one style speaks to them over the other, then they have that option. But might be the same masonry contractor, they might be getting those supplies from the same supplier. I mean, there's, like you said earlier, there's ways to kind of get ahead of these things and plan accordingly, which is good communication.
Yes, exactly. And I would say for any type of builder, whether they choose to offer a consistent product or they're doing a different home every time, one strategy that I've seen employed that's very effective is paying more often. So we do have some
Mm.
builders in our network who are paying trades weekly, and that bumps them way up the list. People do not like waiting to get paid. So eliminating that problem is very helpful to getting them to the front of the line.
Yeah, we're all human. I mean, everybody's going to go to the job that's going to pay them sooner if they have the choice, right?
Exactly. Yes. And being able to provide clarity and consistency in communication where you have predefined subcontractor scopes of work where people know what to expect from their job, they know what you're expecting, and they know what to expect from you is very helpful as well, regardless of what type of product you build.
I love that. So, what about finding new pools of talent? What about getting employee candidates from different types of places that maybe we've historically gone? Maybe it's not on Indeed or LinkedIn. Maybe it's somewhere else, job boards or at the local university or college. What other things have you seen done that have been successful?
Those are all great strategies. Speaking of competition, I have heard of people driving by their competitors' job sites, and
Yeah.
you know, it's a strategy, right? It's a way to see like who's doing the job well, and might
Hmm.
they like the opportunity to work in a little different environment? Could I provide something better for them that would draw them over here?
Yeah, $2,000 sign-on bonus, and we hear that all the time. Uh, I have customers tell me, "Oh man, yeah, they actually have." There's a concrete contractor in Texas I was speaking with recently, and they literally have site superintendents that are almost standing guard on the jobs just to keep competitors and other visitors, for lack of a better word, off of the job sites from trying to go in and poach their employees while they're working.
Yes. So there's a limit to that of what you could pay a person just to recruit them from someone else. So the best thing you can do on the other side to retain those people is to treat them well and give them opportunities to grow. So that's another big piece of labor, is retaining those trades and your employees by making sure that they feel valued and that their work is meaningful. That's really one of the top reasons people stay in a job, is that they feel like their work is meaningful, that they're contributing to something, and that they're appropriately compensated for it.
Yeah, I love how solution-minded you are, and you're spinning that to positive and saying, there's an opportunity here to win their affection, win their trust, win their loyalty by treating them better and doing these extra things, not just necessarily standing guard and keeping the competitors away that way, but more keeping them attracted by the value and the opportunity you're actually providing them.
Yes, I'll add to that people are looking for leadership that know what they want and where they're going. If you're panicking and concerned, that starts to make them panicked and concerned about their job. So if you need to have that conversation with a friend, or a fellow builder about how you're worried about interest rates, or you're worried about sales pace slowing down, or you can't get materials or what have you, better to have that conversation with somebody who's not in your team, so that they're not, it's good to be honest, to convey the reality of what needs to be worked through, but to not do it in such a way that they get the impression that you think it's not resolvable.
Yeah,
because they'll just go find somebody who can.
Right. Yeah, you're not adding to the fear and uncertainty, right? Or the doubts that they're having.
Right.
I love that. And that's back to your partner up approach, right? Whether it's partnering physically by joining crews and, tag teaming on a large project versus, trying to hire 100 people that just aren't there to hire. Or like you said, just comparing notes and best practices, taking a fellow contractor to lunch or to dinner and maybe just getting some ideas and bouncing things off of each other. So love that idea of collaboration.
Yeah, if construction industry was an oligopoly, like the fuel industry, then they would just all get together and say, okay, this is what we're going to pay for this, and this is what we're going to pay for that, and this is what we're going to charge for this.
Hashtag price fixing.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah. Yep. That's true. So this has been a fantastic conversation. I know we're only about halfway through the presentation that I saw that I thought was fascinating. So I think we'd love to have you on an episode next week to maybe finish the rest of the conversation. How does that sound to you?
Sounds great, Mike. I'd love to.
Awesome. So before we wrap up, I just have one other quick question. What would you hope, at least from this first part of these discussions, that companies and our listeners come away with from our discussion today?
I would like for them to go away with a feeling that there are solutions for the challenges that our industry is facing, and that together we can overcome those challenges and do what we all want to do, which is provide excellent products for people to be able to move into a new home and have the joy of that, or remodeling a home and have the joy of that.
I love that. Well, this has been a nice and a fun and a refreshing conversation. I've really appreciated your insights, and I know that our listeners will as well. And really looking forward to having that second discussion and continuing on next week.
Thank you, Mike. Same here.
All right. Take care.
Thank you for joining us today on the Mobile Workforce Podcast, sponsored by About Time Technologies and WorkMax. If you liked the conversation we had today, or were able to learn anything new or helpful, please make sure to follow us on our WorkMax page on LinkedIn and on Instagram at WorkMax_. And subscribe to the show on iTunes or your preferred podcast platform so you will never miss another insightful episode. Also, if you enjoyed the podcast, please leave us a 5-star rating and review and share the show with your friends and colleagues. Your support means the world to us and will allow us to continue providing impactful information with others looking to improve their results in their business and, in turn, their life.